listening to Plan B Podcast. The opinions expressed and shared on this podcast are of our own. Welcome to planb.sg.
Stop this right here.
Welcome to a very special episode of the Plan B Podcast. I'm Dzar Ismail.
And I'm Darren Mark.
And I'm Rahman.
Oh, very nervous, huh?
Yeah.
Can you hear it? I mean, just from Zar's intro, it's like he kind of improved a bit. It was a different intro than usual.
I think our listeners know who's our guest, our special guest on the show. But just like a rating for you, Darren, how nervous are you?
I can feel the stomach kind of shifting a bit.
Oh, really?
Maybe that gives you the answer.
If it helps, I'm equally nervous.
So you heard his voice. Rahman, do the honors to intro our guest.
So today we have the most special guest we have for 2024.
We will probably ever have, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. So we have with us Prime Minister Mr. Lawrence Wong.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you for coming.
Rahman, Dzar, Darren, good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us on the show. So before we start anything, I need to slide in there that we were from
a
the
claim.
Yeah, claim. I need to claim.
Why you like this? The thing haven't even started. You already want to claim.
Yeah.
Once in a while, bro.
Okay.
Must try. How often can you say you have something in common with the Prime Minister? You don't have, right?
Fair.
You don't-
I don't have. I don't have.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we came from the same secondary school.
Whoa.
DK Tech.
Yes. So, and I hold that with pride because I thought those were amongst the best years of my life.
Yeah.
The growth period. So because of that, I just wanted to test something out. When we knew of this interview, I was thinking to myself, I could still sing the school song in my head.
Okay.
But sadly, I couldn't remember my junior college song
Yeah.
for some reason.
All right.
So I'm going to
It's
just...
true because I think I feel the same way. Because for secondary school, we sang it for 4 years.
Yeah. A longer period. But I also feel like it's better memories, the period of time where you grow the most.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start by saying the opening line. And I just want to see whether you can remember the second line.
Okay. Why not we do it this way? We do it together. 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Okay. On your count.
Okay,
You count.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
On the seashore of the endless world, with the mind and with the body.
Okay, enough.
Thank you for stopping it there because I was like, what am I Zar supposed to do?
Wow, I feel pride. I feel a genuine sense of pride. Yeah.
Wow, I mean, secondary school.
Tanjong Katong.
Yes.
Tanjong Katong.
Where were you
Pride.
from?
I was from VS.
Oh,
Hey, nearby.
Victoria.
atas school. Would you consider like VS atas school? I'm from a neighborhood school, St. Min Secondary.
Not similar as Raffles, but
Right.
not bad. I think TK was also not a bad school, right?
So
All schools are good schools.
You beat us to it. You beat us to it. Yeah.
He's been wanting to ask you that. Do you believe
Do
that?
you really?
Of course. I mean, I came from a neighborhood school,
Actually
Cape
true,
Boys Primary, Tanjong Katong Technical.
I see.
I think I turned out okay.
Understatement of the century.
So on that note, we're talking about schools, right? I think there was a particular influential figure in our community.
Yes.
Kind of draw comparisons of people from a certain
Education background,
background versus himself. Not at par. If you want to marry someone, you make sure someone is well educated from a proper school. I'm not going to mention who the figure is.
Don't need don't need.
Yeah, but I feel this sharing online, it kind of like reflects a certain group of people who still holds on to what it means to be successful in our community. And we always talk about like redefining success.
Yep.
And I always feel like, okay, when we talk about redefining success, is it something of lip service? Or for me, if it actually is in practice in our community, then we can say that success has been redefined. So coming back to the conversation, right? So like, how do we redefine success in this day and age? What does it mean? Like during Rahman's time, possibly during my time as well, we talk about the 5 C's and all that. And today, I can safely say the 5 C's can hold some sort of relevance because that's what we look at material.
My generation didn't even talk about 5 C's anymore.
Yeah.
Well, people still talk about material success, but I think increasingly when we had Forward Singapore engagements 2 years ago, many young Singaporeans said they want a wider definition of success. They want to refresh our Singapore dream. Obviously, you can't run away from having some basic elements of material wealth, right? If you talk about having different definitions, chasing your passion and dream, but your income gap is so wide, then it's just paying lip service. It rings hollow. And that's why we have to uplift wages for across the board. We have to make sure that our technicians, our ITE graduates all earn better pay, which we are trying to do. Government is doing that through progressive wages, through supporting them in workfare and other schemes. But once the assurance is there, I think many young Singaporeans would like to pursue areas that they are strong at, because each one of us is different. We have different abilities. I just heard just now Darren is a polyglot, for example, knows how to speak multiple languages, and everyone has different strengths. We really don't have to compare with one another. We really shouldn't be trying to trap ourselves into some vicious hyper competition and rat race just for the sake of keeping up with one another. So, and that comes up very strongly from young people. So if we can move away from that kind of a mindset and each one try to be the best version of ourselves in whatever field, and it will be a journey of discovery. Right? And everyone will sort of start with something and then over time learn, develop, grow. And from the government's point of view, I think we want to encourage everyone to go as far as they can on this journey and maximize their full potential. I hope that is what the Refresh Singapore dream can be about.
But I do want to raise something because, and I've always had this kind of semi-argument with Rahman, because some people feel, right, like this new attitude, maybe like this new generation's view of success is like an excuse for not working as hard. You know, there is this sentiment. Exactly. There is this sentiment. So, for example, we've seen trends around the world. China had this like
life
flat movement.
What's it called?
Quiet quitting and life flat.
Yes. And then you always hear Rahman complain because he's an employer. Then you say, your generation always like this.
No, but it's true. Because nowadays people come to interviews and they don't ask about what's the scope that they're going to learn, what kind of experiences they're going to gain. They don't ask that anymore. Instead, they ask, can I work from home? How flexible are the hours? I mean, something's got to give. And while I understand a need for shift towards better balance, but like hard work, you can't run away from that.
I sometimes feel, I hear that a lot from employers. I sometimes feel that every generation kinds of thinks that they are better than the next generation comes after them.
Finally.
Because when we were growing up, our seniors said the same thing of us.
Yeah, that's true.
And then now we are saying that of the younger people.
That's true.
But that aside, you do hear that from employers. But when you talk to young people, I think they are prepared to work hard. I still feel they are prepared to have discipline and work hard, but they need to find purpose. If they don't quite know, it's not like when maybe in an older generation where you tell you to do, you do, and you might not know why you are doing it, but you still do anyway. Now, I think the young people need to know why am I doing it? What is the purpose of this? And if they can find, so employers, every one of us needs to find ways to engage them on their purpose. And if you can find that sweet spot where they find that this is something that I feel I'm good at doing for the young person, that I have some skill set, and then I am enthused and excited about getting better at it. Then over time, they find purpose, they find fulfillment. And I think they will be prepared to put in the hours to work hard at it. But that's critical. Engaging them to unlock that purpose.
So it's not just that you can do, but also that you feel it's worth doing.
Because everyone wants to feel that they matter, that whatever they do is value. And I think we need to think about how we can find ways to engage young people on that.
Oh, thank you.
So I think when you mention purpose, I don't think it's just special just to the young. In fact,
it's all of us.
It's all of us. We start finding our purpose.
Tell Rahman.
No, I agree. I mean, when you put it as eloquently as a PM does, of course I will accept, bro. You see how good I angkat?
Okay.
No, but actually, Dzar mentioned earlier about the shifts in valuing success and which school you go to, what's the quality of the education, whether you can provide for your family and whatnot. Now, I just want to say that we did a review of the NDR where you talked about the community success. And I thought it was extremely refreshing. And all of us resonated with it because with no disrespect to anyone in particular, for many years, every time I watched the NDR, it was there's a sense of foreboding because there's still this area to work on, that area to work on, and we have a large listener base who are from the Malay Muslim community.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, what would you want to see for the community moving forward, arising from that positivity of your idea?
Yeah. Well, I would say when I think about issues of the community, I would say in every community, there will always be challenges and issues. Whether it's a Malay Muslim community, Chinese, Indian, there will always be issues. And there are different ways in which you can look at it. You can focus on the issues, and that's one approach. Or you can embrace the challenges and the issues and use that to motivate yourself to do better. And I perhaps favor the latter approach, to think of it in a more positive sense. And perhaps also partly shaped by my experience, because when I was growing up, in primary school, in Haig Boys' School, we had many Malay students in my class in school. They all did well. In fact, 1 or 2 years ahead of me, the top student in Haig Boys was a Malay student.
Oh.
Top student in the school, not just the class, for PSLE. And then when I went to TK, I had Malay friends from school, from Haig Boys, who went with me to TK. They were in my class, progressed through secondary school, went to JC. Some of them did well, lawyers, other professions. And when I look at their kids and their children, their kids are also doing even better. So I see many positive and many inspiring success stories. And I think we should highlight that to motivate the community. Does it mean that there are no problems? Of course not. Are there people who are struggling and finding it hard to cope? Yeah, sure. So let's do our best to help them, to uplift them. But let's recognize that the overall direction, the progress that the community is moving is the right one. We are taking steps forward as a community, as Singapore too, and work together to continue moving in the right direction.
You know, I mean, there is a narrative, right, that talks about how they don't even like the idea that the community needs to be talked about separately.
Yeah.
So there is this narrative. Some of the more
some segments.
some segments they feel like like why is there a need? Just look at it from a national standpoint.
Yeah.
So everybody,
I think you do see that more and more.
Yes.
Because when I engage many Malay Muslim community groups and also individuals, young and old, more and more the issues are national issues. But there are still community issues from time to time. But more and more you do engage them on national issues. So perhaps along the way, the balance will evolve. I think inevitably there will always be, like I said, it's not unique to the Malay Muslim community at all. Each community has its own sets of issues and challenges. You have to deal with them sometimes at the community, but over time, as our Singaporean identity grows, I think there will be more and more, a lot of the issues we deal with will be at the national level.
So one of the things that we were able to do with Plan B is to connect with Singaporean Malay Muslims, especially outside of the country. Like I think last year we went to Dubai. There's a very healthy Singaporean expat group over there. Then of late we went to KL. One of the things that they really speak passionately about is they always like to encourage our community, like, to find better opportunities, learn to get out of your bubble, go out of the country because there's so much more opportunities outside. So like as someone who's, I'm a proud patriot. I love the country.
Yes.
But when I hear things like that, I'm like,
I think,
sure or not?
Like Chef, you can relate more. Yeah.
I think last year, right, we went to Dubai.
Yes.
Then we spoke to Chef Akmal. Made like a lot of success he has gotten in Dubai, and then of course he opened his harmanis over here.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when he shared about his struggles, there were long periods of time where he felt I wouldn't say ostracized, kind of like a harsh word.
underappreciated.
Yes, of his skills over here. And he says someone of his color can maybe have more opportunities outside. And that's what he did with Dubai. Fantastic job. And when he come here, only when he has achieved success outside was he recognized he felt over here in Singapore.
So it's the sentiment that like you have to work twice as hard to get to the same place. As like,
I understand.
Yeah.
I hear the sentiments. I would say in any multiracial society, it is harder to be a minority than a majority. That's true everywhere.
Yes.
That's true everywhere. And that's why members of the majority community have to do their part to be more sensitive and to reach out and engage our friends in the minority community. And this cuts across all aspects of life. For example, when you speak in a group, make sure you speak in the language that minorities can understand. You know, when you make comments, make sure you avoid stereotypes or sensitive comments. And I think most people understand this, but from time to time, these things will happen. And it can cause real hurt. It can cause a feeling that I'm underappreciated or I have to work doubly hard. And that's why I think while Singaporeans understand, for the majority community, we still need to work even more, do even more to accommodate, engage, and welcome members of the minority community, because we are all one Singapore together. I mean, overall, if you look at the situation in Singapore, I think we are in a much better position compared to other countries which are also multiracial societies. You know, look at how the balance is, how minorities are treated elsewhere, and how they are able to fit into their societies. No one has a good answer. We are, I think, in a much better position, but we have to work even harder to make sure that we maintain this sense of harmony and unity together. So that's on the majority-minority part. The second aspect of what you said is going abroad. Actually, that's true for all Singaporeans. I think that's true for all Singaporeans, because if you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to be a chef in particular, it is hard. F&B is very hard in Singapore. It's very competitive. Our market is very small. And if you're even within our small market, catering to an even smaller market, it's very hard to do business. And so it is true, we should encourage Singaporeans to embrace opportunities beyond our shores. It doesn't mean that we're not patriotic. It just means we have to, recognize that to do business in Singapore, given our small market size, not easy. And if we want to scale, if we want to succeed, I think we have to look at widening the market and trying our best to go beyond our shores. And I do see successful Malay Muslim entrepreneurs. In F&B, I met Mustafa Kamal. Black Hole.
Yeah, he's a friend of all of us.
They're quite successful. I mean, you will talk to him, he will tell you he has struggles too.
True.
But not bad. I mean, doing quite reasonably well, expanding with different kinds of F&B cuisines. Quite interesting and appealing to a wide market in Singapore. Not bad. And I hope there will be many more success stories, not just Singapore, but then taking their success, whether it's F&B or elsewhere, to other markets outside of Singapore. I think that's all to be encouraged. And when Singaporeans go abroad, we want them to feel they are still Singaporeans. They will always have a place in Singapore. Singapore will always be home. They will always be valued. Because you have friends who do go abroad, sometimes to seek greener pastures. And this is whether it speaks in the true of majority or minority communities, Chinese, Malay, Indian. We all know of friends who do that. And sometimes they'll come back and tell you, well, yes, maybe life is slower abroad, but bigger country, so vast, I can buy land, I can buy car. Yes, but I will always still be an outsider in a foreign country. And that's the reality. Whereas for all of us as Singaporeans, Singapore will always be home. Are things perfect here? No, they are not perfect. But if it's not Singaporeans who try to make it better, who else will bother? It's up to us, Singaporeans, to try and improve and make Singapore an ever more perfect society.
But I guess that's the hard part, right? Like, as in trying to make sure that people exploring opportunities overseas doesn't turn into a brain drain. Doesn't turn into a situation where people want to stay and retire there, for example.
So actually, we argue about this a lot because previously I've said to him many times, like, I don't understand why all the top jobs in Singapore, sometimes we have to fly in other talent. What's wrong with our local market? Is it the best of the best are leaving? Why do we not have the best of the best Singaporeans taking those top jobs?
You have even considered like going overseas. What was the thought process like? Maybe you can share.
To retire, definitely. I mean, because one good thing about Singapore is the Singaporean dollar is strong. And if you have a strong Singapore dollar, it can go a long way, especially in retirement. Whether it's a small house in Malaysia, whether it's an island resort in Indonesia, that Singapore dollar, the retirement that you build here will go a much longer way elsewhere. So that is definitely at the forefront of my mind when it comes to thinking about the future in Singapore becoming a more growing population. I don't want to be a burden on my kids. Right? I would not. I would like to go somewhere where it's cheap. I can maintain myself on whatever I have built here in Singapore.
Yes.
But pulling back to Darren's question, how do we make sure while we're still young, we don't lose too much talent?
Well, we have to keep trying. I mean, are there, I mean, the top jobs in some of these big multinational enterprises are jobs where the companies, the employers will choose on merit. It has to be. We cannot force them to say, choose only Singaporeans. I think that would be not the right thing to do. And if we insist on that, I think many companies will say, then I prefer not to be here. And then we will lose even more, because then we will lose even more jobs for Singaporeans. So on merit, fine, but make sure it's truly on merit. Right? And so we have to make sure that there is fair employment, fair practice, and we are putting in legislation now, very soon, to ensure that this happens in the workforce, in the job market, that it's truly on the basis of individual merit. It's not by nationality, it's not by race, it's not by age, right? Then when you find the best person for the job, at the top level or at the senior levels, it is very competitive because a Singaporean is not competing with just your fellow Singaporeans, you're competing with the global market.
True. Yep.
It is challenging. But having said that, I would say we hold our own. Singaporeans are doing quite well, even in such a competitive environment. And the reason is we as a government try to lean forward to support Singaporeans more and provide training, make sure that the companies, the MNCs that are in Singapore provide technology transfer, provide talent development programs. We do everything to lean in favor of Singaporean professionals. So if you look, just think of banks. Banks is one sector that everyone says has foreign CEOs, for example. But if you really do a count today and you look at across all the international banks, local and foreign banks, more and more Singaporean professionals are rising up to senior levels, becoming regional CEOs. And if you do even taking on CEO positions overseas. So it's good. It shows that the Singaporean leadership is rising on their own merit, through their own abilities and capabilities, not because we force a quota. And that's the outcome we would like to see. That's the outcome we truly would like to see, that we Singaporeans can command the jobs, the premium jobs. We can do these jobs, but government will support you, the individual works hard, and the employers will employ and promote fairly. And that's the environment that we operate in.
So this is, we're talking about banks, we're talking about people joining into, these established industries. But there's also, I get the feeling that there's a rising entrepreneurial spirit in Singapore as well. So, how do you nurture that? Because at the same time, right, we've also talked about this before. Many people feel like Singapore is very harsh. You fail once and then the whole world collapses around you.
If I can just add, because we've done events before where we get like a home-based business to come on board, in expos. So it's like lesser rental, but they are able to peddle their goods. And you're right about especially in my community, there's this rise of the entrepreneurial class and people wanting to do business. But also it is because of how things are quite expensive right now, and they find the need to do like a side hustle, need something to supplement their income. Food is expensive, transport's on an increase, and education is not cheap as well. Housing as well. I think you mentioned how the Gen Zs and the younger folk are. Some people just how to afford housing. Right?
Like housing is like don't like leave it for next time. Now don't need it first.
So as much as we want to foster like this whole entrepreneurial class to be at the next level, but at the same time, like the youth, how do we manage this increasing costs, especially here in Singapore?
Yeah, well, the two aspects of it. One is cost. One is failure.
Failure.
So on cost, we understand fully. I think cost is one thing that many Singaporeans face. It's also something that's experienced globally because of COVID, because of wars, because of supply chain disruptions. You've seen a high increase in inflation, record highs everywhere in so many different places. Now inflation has come down, fortunately, in Singapore, in many places too, but prices remain high. Inflation coming down is good, but prices still remain high and people have to adjust to it. We are doing our best to help. On housing, for example, we've increased the subsidies. We have also rolled out more new flats, which will be helpful. In fact, I think we are already seeing some signs of improvement for first-timers, meaning the first-timers who are buying a flat, they are getting the flat sooner, and because of the subsidies, it's going to be affordable. Resale market is still high, I recognize, but BTO flats, buy direct from HDB for first-timer families, we have been able to stabilize. And over time, I think the measures we are taking will have some impact on the housing market. But whether it's housing, whether it's retirement, whether it's education, whether it's healthcare, I think these are the basics that most Singaporeans would say are important. And what we want to do through Forward Singapore, through reviewing our policies, is to make sure that across the board, these basics in life, we can provide greater assurances to all Singaporeans. In education, in healthcare, in retirement, that you don't have to worry. There will be greater support in our safety nets for all of you. That's one aspect of it. It will take time. We are reviewing policy by policy. We have made some moves already. In preschool, for example, we have made major moves. It used to be preschool, you do yourself. It's not subsidized. Everyone takes care of your own preschool. Now government comes in with a lot of subsidies to ensure that preschool is affordable for Singaporeans. Of course, if you want to go for the top-end preschool, you're free to do it. But at least across the board, the anchor operators, the partner operators, we make sure that they are quality preschool operators and the fees are affordable. So again, it shows these are steps we are taking step by step across different areas to provide greater assurance across the life cycle for every Singaporean. Then, of course, with that support, with that assurance, hopefully people will be prepared to take greater risk, to venture forth in their own enterprise and whatnot. Failure is a different thing. Because even with that, if you do an enterprise, you are bound to fail initially. I mean, that's part of being an entrepreneur. The entrepreneur has to go through repeated stumbles and then eventually find something that is successful. Are we there yet as a society? I think it's getting better. I think it's getting better compared to, say, 20 years ago. But I think we still have more way to go. And perhaps we need to, whenever we celebrate success stories, because we are very good at celebrating the successes.
Yes.
We should also remind everyone for every success that successful entrepreneur probably has gone through repeated failures before they eventually became successful.
Especially in this age of social media, right? Where you only see the good stuff. Everybody's just inundated with good stuff, but the failures, the hardships, people kind of forget that these things happen.
So we need to, I think, just remind everyone. I mean, sometimes this gets conflated with what you just said just now about the younger generation wanting instant success. They want, but there's no formula for instant success anywhere in the world. It doesn't happen. You can't be successful overnight. For everything that you want to do well in, you need a journey of discovery, of learning, of mastery. And there will be stumbles along the way. So we really also need to start thinking, we are very used to a image of success being a linear progression, just an elevator all the way to the top. But it's not like that. I think success, to the point about different definitions, success is also about going through valleys and peaks, ups and downs in life. And sometimes the failures and the setbacks make us stronger. If life is all rosy, it's very easy to get complacent and get too comfortable. But if we have the right mindset to embrace the challenges, embrace the setbacks, it in fact motivates us to push the limits and be stronger.
So, speaking about entrepreneurship, value creation, and also about costs, one of the things that I've been looking at actively, I mean, I previously tried many other businesses as well. So things like manpower costs and also rental is always a very, very big issue. Now, I remember reading a few months back that there were big companies like Dyson and also Tesla who had initially considered setting base here in Singapore, but then eventually moved to other countries. So my question to you,
Dyson is still here,
but there are some
some parts have moved. Some parts have moved.
So moving forward, right? And considering the fact that some parts have moved, how can we tap on our strengths and also the strengths of our neighbors? For example, I think I mix with many international communities. Singapore's banking infrastructure is something that is lauded. Everybody knows how fantastic it is when it comes to our system of laws, when it comes to our judiciary and the ability to enforce judgments in Singapore. All of these things are things that we can hold very proud of.
That's right.
And because of that, it is an instant draw. Many international companies want to come here, and that would mean greater jobs for Singaporeans. But how do we help manage things like cost of land, cost of rental, cost of running the operations, and what can we do in the future? Sir?
We can try our best to manage the cost increases, but Singapore will always operate at a premium. That's the reality. One big aspect of cost is wage cost. I mean, if we want wage cost to be low, then we go back to 1970 salaries.
Correct. Doesn't work.
No.
Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So we can't expect today's standard of living at 1970 prices. So costs, we'll manage to increase as much as we can, and from time to time where the government is able to, we provide some relief, we provide some help for individuals as well as for companies. But Singapore will not be the same price. I mean, we cannot be a cheap place to operate from. There will be a premium. So I think the answer to the question is, aside from focusing on cost, is to think about the other side of it. Well, how do we justify the premium to operate out of Singapore? What is the value proposition that we have? And it simply means some business models are not applicable here. If you want to run a very labor-intensive operations with low value added, Singapore is not the place to be in. We can operate and we can be successful for high tech, high value add. That means these are high frontier capabilities. And that's a lot of the things that companies want to do in Singapore. The cutting edge capabilities, which will create good jobs, exciting jobs for many young people.
Yes.
In science and technology, in new areas, across different industries, finance, biomedical science, engineering. And then as that happens, then some of the lower value added industries may say, look, Singapore is no longer so viable. And then they may have to move to regional countries. And this is not new, actually. I mean, we used to do car manufacturing in Singapore.
Right, yeah.
But car manufacturing, Ford factory, for example.
Oh, that's really long, man.
How long ago was this?
Yeah, it was 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
We had a Ford factory. But it's no longer, I mean, even factories like garments and textiles, we used to have those.
Yes.
They are no longer viable at large scale in Singapore. They are moving to different places. Bangladesh, Vietnam, different places. So that industry restructuring and transformation must continue to happen. And as it continues to happen, as you say, one way in which we can manage it well is to link up closer with our regional neighbors. That's why we are pursuing closer cooperation with Malaysia, with the Johor-Singapore SEZ.
Yes.
That's why we have Batam, Bintan and the Karimun, the Riau Islands, where we have lots of projects so that then companies can operate quite seamlessly. Right? They come to Singapore, the high value add functions will be here, the R&D, the headquarters, the legal, all the key critical functions and the high value add functions will be in Singapore creating good jobs. But then the MNC can operate seamlessly out of the region too. And different components which make more sense to operate out of Johor, out of BBK, out of Vietnam, they can operate through Southeast Asia as a whole. That's what we are trying to do. And that's why we have been focusing a lot on not just Malaysia, Indonesia, but also integrating the entire Southeast Asian economies.
So speaking of like Southeast Asia, one of the things that we were able to do, because we're kind of flexible with our discussions, especially when we go overseas, we meet other podcasters from other countries. They're always very interested to find out about the point of view, especially for myself, like a minority Singaporean here. And one of the things that they like to ask, and always put me in a spot, is it's true. Like, I don't know what to say which is politically correct. You know, that will not anger sentiments here, because we have a very diverse group of people here, right?
Yes.
I'm talking about the Israel and Palestine conflict especially, and they were asking, I want to ask you, what do you feel about this? Are you keeping quiet in your country? Do you feel strongly about this? Why are your other colleagues not talking about this? So really, at times, it puts it into perspective. Like, I'm quite vocal on the issue, but this is of course my opinion online. But I'm also very careful to what sort of vocality do I project my opinions, because it might affect other people in my country. So like, for yourself as the leader of the country, where do we actually stand on this? And what is the right answer to actually, when we meet our friends overseas, what do we tell them?
Yeah. Well, it's something I engage with when I meet my counterparts from around the world too, because when in recent months I've been very busy on international trips bilaterally and also at multilateral forums, APEC, G20, ASEAN. In fact, leaders around the world are very concerned about the state of the world. Yep. We want all of us, we want the wars to stop in Ukraine and the wars in the Middle East. And we in Singapore are working very hard, doing our part as part of this international effort to stop the wars. But for the Middle East, we want a two-state solution. That's our position, which means we will do everything we can together with international partners to secure a homeland and a state for the Palestinian people. It's not going to be easy, especially after recent events, but we have to continue with efforts in that direction. Stop the war, end the hostilities, return the hostages, and then get going this negotiation and the process for a two-state solution and for a state for the Palestinian people. In the meantime, there is a great need for humanitarian assistance. Huge, because unfortunately, what has happened is the response by Israel has resulted in a tremendous humanitarian tragedy. And there's a great need for humanitarian assistance. We have given 5 rounds of assistance working with partners in the Middle East. We will probably continue to do more. We also have good relations with the Palestinian Authority. And that's why we have extended to them technical assistance and capability building programs. In fact, recently, Minister Maliki was there in the Middle East and he announced an expansion of the program so that we can provide not just technical training, but also scholarships for Palestinian students at the undergraduate and the graduate level to study in Singapore. We are doing all of that so that we can help the Palestinian people to be ready eventually for their statehood. They will need capabilities. And we want to help them get there in due course. Of course, this is what government is doing, but I think it's also very encouraging to see across Singapore a lot of ground-up efforts, many ground-up efforts to support and help the Palestinian people. And we want to encourage that so that when we feel this is something we really want to do something about, not just for the Malay Muslim community, but for all of us as Singaporeans, because this is a humanitarian issue. We want to do something to support them. Then there's something positive, there's something constructive that all of us can do. And that's something very heartening to see across Singapore.
So actually, I just want to share my perspective. You see, sometimes when we are discussing these topics on the show, we get pockets of people who want to push an agenda, or who they want immediate action. They want the government to take
Drastic
a certain
action,
stand, drastic action, which I think
I can understand the sentiments.
But we have on many different platforms we have debated this, and we have shared that, like, in Singapore we are from multi-different communities. It doesn't make sense for us to take a harsh stand. And we've talked about it many times. But the technical assistance that you shared, I think that is one of the greatest things that Singapore has done for Palestine. And I only learned about it at the dialogue session where I think MP Shahril Taha shared about it. So I think that technical assistance that Singapore is giving, more than money, more than food, is part and parcel of the Singapore brand. It is something unique. It is something that no other country has committed to doing. We are actually we are taking the step forward. We are not just saying that we are committing to a two-state solution. We are helping you develop that once
eventually.
That's right. Infrastructure, traffic. I mean, he was sharing traffic lights, road systems.
That's right.
That level of commitment that Singapore has given is, I think, more than any other country.
Well, I'm glad you see it that way, because that's what we are committed to doing. That's what we are committed to doing. We want to do things that are useful not performative.
Yes.
I mean, there are a lot of performative gestures that one can do.
Yep.
But I think set that aside, what is concrete, what's practical, what's useful for Palestine and the Palestinian people. And one useful way in which we can be helpful is truly in technical assistance. It's the Singapore way. And we have been always doing that with Southeast Asia, with many other countries too, because we have been through this journey as a newly developed nation in turmoil with practically nothing. And then we've built Singapore through the sheer ingenuity, wit, and the hard work of our people. And we've got some lessons. We're not saying everything we do is perfect, but I think we've got some value to share. And perhaps when we share it, we can help to shorten the learning curve for many of these countries. And I think for Palestine and the Palestinian people, it can be very helpful. And we want to help them prepare for their eventual statehood.
It's not just that, right? It's also the fact that Singapore itself, we are in a sense, we're almost like an oasis, right? Like, because the world is really, falling to all sorts of places.
He used more colorful language.
I would, but if you were not here, I would have.
The world is getting, it's unfortunate. We wish the world is not in the state that it is today. But if you look around the world and you look at US, China, you look at the tensions, at the geopolitical rivalry, it is quite frightening. It is quite frightening. And it is becoming a world where, unfortunately, in the past, you could say the US was the world's policeman. Like them or not, there is one policeman. And if people do something wrong, the policeman says stop. People stop. Now the US doesn't want to be the world's policeman. Other big countries are not ready to be the world's policeman. In fact, they are all fighting with one another. So when something happens, when disaster strikes, when conflicts happen, when wars happen, you say stop. They say, please, I'm not going to listen to you. Right? And that's why you end up with very little consequences. People are just pushing their own agendas. And that's frightening to us because someday we may be the recipients of some bad actor wanting to do bad things to Singapore. Then who is going to protect us? You can't count on anyone. We have to protect ourselves. We have to defend our own sovereignty. And that's why it's important.
But there's also like this very valuable thing that Singapore has, which is that we have people from all of these different communities actually here. And they can still stay in peace. I have spoken with Russians, Ukrainians, Israelis, Palestinians. And you think about what's happening around the world, right? Where those things on a global stage is also affecting the local fabric. But over here, people kind of know and respect that, Singapore is and it's an oasis lah, basically. That's just something that I personally have felt quite amazed about because it's when you have that safe space that I personally was quite shocked when I was able to speak with some of these people and, explore some things that I think you cannot talk about in other places.
So this is just one of the sporadic moments that Darren has something positive to talk about. Normally, whenever we're on the show,
always like this.
You give us this negative, like a depiction of the world. And coming to a close for this interview, what's one positive that Singaporeans can look out for under your leadership in the future, sir?
Yes.
Well, before that, I just want to go back to what Darren said. I fully agree that in a troubled, turbulent world, which will, I think, unfortunately, only get worse over the next few years, we have been able to distinguish ourselves. It's something very valuable as an oasis of stability, of peace and harmony, as a place where people will say it's trusted and it's reliable. That is very, very valuable. And it's possible only because, by and large, there is a high level of trust in Singapore. And there's a strong sense of solidarity and unity. Yes, we have our differences. That's bound to be, but we don't allow these differences to pull us apart. And when challenges come, we work together as one people. And that's valuable. I think we must continue to work hard to maintain that. It's very critical. Because, if we lose that ability to stick together as one people, I think Singapore will be finished. And even, whether it's geopolitics or others, there will always be forces that try to pull us apart. social divisions, class divisions.
Yes.
There were foreigners versus local. There will always be forces that try to pull us apart, and we have to resist, and we have to try to make sure that we never get pulled apart like that. That means that we must always maintain an egalitarian ethos in Singapore, right? An ethos where we are all equal, where it's a Singapore where regardless of race, language, religion, we are all the same. Rich or poor, you don't have to, if you're rich, you don't have to flaunt your wealth. You don't have to, have ostentatious shows of your wealth. Rich or poor, we can all go to the same hawker center and makan together, right? And that must be the Singaporean ethos. We are equal, we are restrained, there's an egalitarian tone in our society. And always advancement, how well we do will be on individual abilities, not because of what school I went to, not because of family connections, not because I'm nobility. In some places, whether you are, nobility, whether you are royalty or whether you are whatever class matters. And then there's a divide. We must never have that kind of different tiers. We are all equal. We are all the same. Everyone is valued. And in the end, how well we do, everyone moves on the basis of their individual merit and ability. But we want in Singapore a country where we are able to help every Singaporean to be the best versions of themselves. So that's the Singapore I would like to see. A Singapore where everyone can realize their dreams, and we in government will help you realize your dreams together.
Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, thank you for your time with our listeners here on planb.sg. And I hope you enjoyed the episode. Yep. And if you like this content, please like and share with your friends via your WhatsApp. And also tag us on Instagram. We'll repost it as well. That's it from us. We'll see you on the next podcast only on planb.sg. Bye-bye.
You're listening to Plan B Podcast. The opinions expressed and shared on this podcast are of our own. Welcome to planb.sg.
Stop this right here.